It's Thursday, December 19th. You're watching CBC News BC. I'm Benita Rach. We're here live in the Vancouver newsroom. Let's get to your top stories this afternoon. Well, CBC News has learned that a police officer from Central Saanich charged with sexual assault on Tuesday has died. Several police sources say Matthew Ball died by suicide that very day. The 43-year-old was identified in a press conference following an investigation by VPD, and Ball was one of two officers charged with sexual assault. He was also facing a charge of breach of trust. BC's former Solicitor General says the officers should have been monitored.
The standard operating procedure is you put them on administrative duties or administrative leave while you continue on with the serious allegations against them. That doesn't seem to have occurred in this particular case.
Ball and Ryan Johnston were alleged to have engaged in a sexual relationship with a woman they met while on the job. Police described the alleged victim as vulnerable and in her mid-20s. And in Delta, police say a woman has been charged with attempted murder after allegedly trying to drive a car carrying two young children into the Fraser River. Police say officers responded to an incident on River Road on November 29th, where they found a car stuck on the foreshore of the river. Firefighters and bystanders rescued the driver and the children, who were taken to hospital. Police said the woman has now been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and remains in custody. And this past September, there was an alleged attack on a 13-year-old girl in Kelowna. Well, now 5 teens have been charged with 1 count of assault each in this case, where the girl was allegedly lured into a popular lakeside park and then swarmed by several teens, with other young people watching the attack and even recording it on their phones. The 13-year-old's father told reporters yesterday that his daughter, his other child, and their mother have all left Kelowna over fears for their safety. The next court date is in mid-January. And as parts of the province are hit with more rain, the federal government announced it's investing $9.6 million into critical flood protection upgrades in Port Coquitlam. So officials say this is to address the increasing challenges posed by climate change, rising sea levels, and greater rainfall intensity.
To mitigate the impacts of flooding and storms, we're investing in essential infrastructure upgrades that prioritize the safety of Port Coquitlam, the protection of property, and the preservation of our environment. This project will include installation of higher capacity, fish-friendly pumps to enhance flood protection and support fish passage.
So these initiatives will include upgrading, sorry, I just lost my place there. Prompter issues. It's okay, it happens. The projects will include upgrading the Cedar Creek and Maple Creek drainage pump stations. That's that for you. And public health officials are also warning people about eating raw oysters from BC after an increase in reports of gastrointestinal illness. It says since November, 64 cases have been reported into the Vancouver Coastal Health, Fraser Health, and Island Health regions. No one has been admitted to hospital, but the BC CDC is reminding people of the risks associated with eating raw oysters. And there you go. Those are your afternoon headlines. I'm Benita Rach. You're watching CBC News BC. Sorry for that little blip, but BC Today is up next.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. For the first time in more than a decade, more people are leaving BC for other provinces and territories than arriving. So how can we make sure BC is a place where people want to stay? And we'll look at a new campaign urging for a stronger economy to keep people in the province. And the holidays can be lonely for many who don't have friends or family. We'll look at how to make connections to celebrate this season. I'm Amy Bell in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. Thank you so much for joining us here on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story. Have you considered leaving BC? And what should we focus on to keep people in the province? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call us at 1-800-825-5950 or just hit pound 690 on your cell. And as always, you can email us bctoday@cbc.ca. And as I mentioned, for the first time in over a decade, British Columbia is seeing more residents move to other provinces and territories than those arriving. A 2024 Angus Reid survey showed 1 in 3 British Columbians are seriously contemplating leaving. And according to this survey, this shift is largely due to increasing living costs, fewer job opportunities, and overburdened public services. Well, you may have heard about the Alberta is Calling ad campaign, which aims to recruit British Columbians to the wild rose country. Now the Business Council of B.C. is flipping the script and has launched its own campaign called Stay With B.C. So call us now. Have you considered leaving BC? And how can we keep people in BC? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell, and email us bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining me today is Laura Jones. She's the president and CEO of the Business Council of British Columbia. Hello, thanks for coming in today.
Well, thanks so much for having me on the show.
Wonderful to have you. So your campaign states that living in BC shouldn't be so hard. So why is it so hard for people to live in BC these days?
Well, really what we want to do with this campaign is put the focus on the importance of a strong economy, because when we have a strong economy, we have strong communities. People feel that there's a future for them in the province. And I know we spend a lot of time talking about affordability, rightly so. Many of us have sticker shock every time we go to the grocery store these days. But it's not just what things cost, it's also how much income we're earning and what those opportunities are to have a good future. So we really want to put the spotlight on the importance of a strong economy to ensuring that people can see a future here and that to making things feel more affordable.
There does really seem to have been a tipping point quite recently. We are used to inflation. We're used to there being tougher times and homes being expensive here. Do you sense, though, that there has been a real tipping point with certain generations even?
I think so. I mean, when you look at the people who are thinking of leaving the province, that is highest amongst those who are under 40. Many people, and you hear this anecdotally, you also see it in the data, that many people under 40 are just saying, I don't know how I'm going to make a living here. I don't know how I'm going to be able to afford housing here. And so that Alberta's calling, you get tempted to answer that call.
Right. And so what is the response that you've come up with, the Stay With BC campaign? Let us know, explain that to us and the approach to it here.
Yeah, so it's a serious topic, people not seeing a future in the province, but we wanted to have get people's attention and maybe have a little bit of fun with the serious topics so that we can really get people engaged in the conversation that we need to have around how to change this. So this isn't about accepting that it should be hard to stay in BC. This is about how do we change the conditions. I mean, this is the first time in a decade we've got more people leaving than coming. Typically, BC is someplace that people do see a future and they want to move here.
Right.
So how do we get back to that? And we know that our one campaign isn't going to solve all the problems. Like we've
mean, it
heard
would
that
be
from
lovely if it
people.
did,
It'd be
but-
lovely if it did. But we do know that a good conversation contributes to the solution. We've already seen people engaging with us online around the campaign. I think it has caught people's attention. I think most people know someone who's thought about leaving. And so it's kind of, we're having a little bit of fun with it and
Right.
tapping into a little bit of provincial pride too. We want to stay with the province.
There is that, but I think sometimes, addressing a serious topic such as this in a bit of a tongue-in-cheek way does grab people's attention and then does get those conversations. And I was actually thinking about it when I saw the 1 in 3 looking to leave. I thought, oh no, that can't be right. But very quickly, I sort of thought back over the past 6 months, and I can easily think of 3 people in my circle that have mentioned it or have made steps to make that a reality. So yeah, it certainly is an issue. We'll take in a couple calls now, if you don't mind. The first one from Chris in Cranbrook. Hi, Chris. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, how you doing, Amy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
that's good. And what are your thoughts on people potentially leaving the province and what we can do to make sure we keep people here or attract new people?
Well, 3 things. 1, reduce the taxes. 2, build more houses. 3, bolster the healthcare system, because the doctors and the nurses and the techs from the hospital, they don't have any place to live. And don't put them all in like the lower mainland. Put them up in, like rural communities.
All very good points.
And then, but, doctors want to be, excited and doing their trade. But I heard a call this morning that this one lady moved from Iowa to Winnipegosis because things weren't good down in the States in her job. But anyway, I digress. But anyway, reduce the taxes, build more homes, and bolster the healthcare system.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Chris. And I can see you nodding your head. And we heard that time and time again, even as people were gearing up for our last provincial election. It's the economy, it's housing, it's healthcare. Those are the key issues that everybody is concerned about.
Caller hit on all 3 issues that people are concerned about. And what I would say about reducing the taxes is agree with that. But what we need in order to make tax reductions possible is we need more investment in the economy. So we just had a fiscal update, and the deficit in British Columbia is now bigger than expected. We need to get those big projects going, approved faster. So this is one of the things we want to talk about in the conversation, that let's get beyond just some of the, reduce the taxes, that's right, but what is it going to take for us to be in a position in British Columbia where we can reduce taxes? And because we're not in a great position to do that right now with the deficit being what it is.
And there is that correlation that at times people... I don't think it's that they forget, that they perhaps don't realize that so much of the infrastructure and things that the province depends on are paid for by the taxes. And so that's why they are so high at times. Yeah,
a strong economy is not just about buying more stuff, right? It's about doing more good things, having more nurses and doctors, so that more than, that we don't have the problems we have right now, where 1 in 5 British Columbians are struggling to find a family doctor.
And that has been an ongoing issue for quite some time. We'll take another call now from Arlene in Langley. Hi, Arlene. Thanks for joining the conversation.
Oh, hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course. So have you yourself thought about leaving BC?
Yes. I actually have been watching real estate in Nova Scotia for 5 years. And interestingly, it's tripled in price on average over that 5 years. Still way more reasonable than I'm in the lower mainland, obviously, Langley.
Right.
But so my thing on making living in BC more affordable would be let's more effectively tax the ultra wealthy, which is also tax related, then there's less tax for the people that are literally struggling to make ends meet. And, that way, all of our services are better provided for. People can actually afford where they're living. Instead of just taxing the lifeblood out of the working class, everybody knows that the ultra wealthy have a million loopholes and they pay next to no tax. So to me, that's like a very, that would help a lot and help the government too, because they'd be getting more money out of them than they are out of us right now.
Right. Oh, well, I thank you for those points, Arlene. And we do hear that a lot of people have been keeping an eye on real estate in many other provinces. And we're seeing that huge that gap closing as those provinces perhaps are raising their prices. We'll get a call in from Wayne. He has a bit of an opposite perspective, I believe. Hi, Wayne. You're calling us from Vancouver.
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi.
So my perspective is I recently moved to British Columbia from the Prairie Provinces.
Okay.
I'm originally from Saskatchewan, and I moved to Alberta because I also fell for that Alberta is calling stuff, and only to find myself in Alberta, like my partner and I in Alberta, with no jobs. So, and then we had the only other job opportunities were in British Columbia.
Okay.
So that was one where we kind of had to move. Not necessarily because it was our dream desire to move there, but because it was the only employment opportunities for our fields in kind of the Western Canada. And that kind of goes into jobs that are in demand in British Columbia, that people will come here when there are jobs in fields that are not necessarily healthcare. Because there will be healthcare everywhere, but jobs in industry or businesses that are based in Canada, not necessarily satellite companies from foreign companies, will really help to draw people in.
And Wayne, can I ask what industry you and your partner are in?
We're both in like the, I'm in the nonprofit sector here, there. And ironically, even in the hospitality industry in Saskatchewan and Alberta is not doing too great right now. And also in Saskatchewan, we can see that the cost of living in Saskatchewan has actually tripled as well. I know the previous caller was talking about that. When I was reaching out to my friends back there, it's because there's a large amount of people from British Columbia moving to Saskatchewan and completely bypassing Alberta now.
Interesting perspective. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Wayne. I really appreciate sort of getting the thoughts of somebody that's moved in the opposite direction than what we are discussing. And, him saying that they were lured by that come to Alberta promise and yet didn't find jobs for them there. Is that something that, people need to be a bit more aware of, that it's not this promised land in Alberta?
It's a pretty big decision to move. So, of course, doing your due diligence on that decision is important. But I think one of the things the caller raises is that British Columbia is blessed with a diversity in our economy. And so we do have, as we lean into a stronger economy, we've got tech, we've got resources, we've got tourism, we've got lots of agriculture, we've got lots of sectors. Yeah. And so I think the opportunity is there to get all those sectors firing on all cylinders, and then you've got more opportunity for everybody, and it's a diverse different kinds of opportunities too, which is nice.
And we did have that one caller saying, it's not just sort of areas like Vancouver that we need to focus on. Maybe families that can't afford an area such as Vancouver, even Langley, but there are many areas in the province that perhaps people could consider that we also need to bolster and not just focus on those heavily populated areas.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we need to focus on the sectors that support areas outside of Vancouver and Vancouver, although less visibly support Vancouver. So, whether it's mining or forestry, those sectors, there are a lot of jobs in outside of Vancouver that depend on those sectors being strong, and also in Vancouver, but it's just less visible to us because it's more like the engineering firms or the accountants or the lawyers who are doing the work here. And then they're going out to the local restaurants and the retailers. So we have a very integrated economy, that's very interconnected.
Yeah, it is. And I think we saw that really strongly during the pandemic when we sort of saw that trickle-down effect. And then we see it in opposite directions when we have a major event, say like Taylor Swift coming, and we see all these other industries picking up from that one event. One thing that has been brought up time and time again, though, is younger generations that are looking to leave. And as a parent of a soon-to-be young adult that's in university right now, it is unnerving to really have to factor in whether she'll be able to afford a place in BC, as opposed to whether she wants to be here or where she would like to go. That's going to have a stronger focus. So do we need to really pay more attention to those younger generations and what we can do for them?
Yeah, I think it's close to half of the people who are leaving are under 40.
Okay.
And so you're absolutely right. And then you see that in the Angus Reid survey that you mentioned earlier, where it's 1 in 3 British Columbians thinking of leaving, but 1 in 2 when it comes to the younger demographic. So you're absolutely right.
And then when we see those young and skilled workers leaving BC, what impact does that have on the economy?
Well, they take their talent with them. They take their, enthusiasm and the talent. All the generations add different things to the workforce. So those of us who've been around a little longer, we add our experience and our wisdom. But, when you have young employees come in, they bring, a level of, often they're more comfortable with some of the latest and greatest technology, but they have an enthusiasm that can be infectious. And we want our young people and their talent to stay with BC and not move to other provinces.
We'll take in another call. And of course, we always want people to join the conversation. And you can call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and email us at bctoday@cbc.ca. We'll get a call now from Noel in Vancouver. Hi, Noel. I believe you just graduated university.
Yeah, so I graduated from Simon Fraser University with a major in global environmental systems, which is essentially geography. And geography is all about where things are and why they are where they are. And so something that we went into, which I think is very relevant, right? The question, if I'm correct, is thinking about moving to Alberta.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just graduated in October. I had a year of kind of fighting for jobs, and I had a couple good opportunities. One of them was going into the labor market, so hands-on position, which I wasn't too interested in. And I was blessed to find more of an office position. And this ties to what you were saying, because I'm definitely kind of bringing a technological edge into it compared to the other generation. And the problem we're facing right now actually is literally like paper documents, because it's an old company, and then bringing those paper documents into technology. But what I wanted to speak about relative to moving is kind of like buying power. The reason I would move to Alberta is because I have more capacity to spend money on things I want to be doing. And so I think that everyone needs to have an increase in buying power. And so it's a bit controversial, because to increase buying power, like you may have noticed, for example, on the Lougheed Highway, there have been ads of a hand holding a tiny coffee cup saying that I think it's BC's LNG will increase Canadian buying power. So that's kind of connecting to what me as an individual and you as an individual, what we can do with our money. And right now, we can't buy, like going for coffee, you're paying $5 and it goes up. So it's a nuanced issue, right? Because there's multiple ways to come at it. And so selling gas would increase buying power, but then, of course, that is bad for the environment. So, as an environmental major, that breaks my heart.
Right.
But it's like, okay, well, how else can we increase our buying power? And something that I learned about at university is something called the staples trap. So there's 4 layers of economic products. The first layer is a tree, if we're talking about wood. The first layer is a tree. The second layer is a 2x4. The third layer is a finished table. The fourth layer is education, how to make that table. And so Canada is doing great in the first and the second layer, right? So we're selling all of our milk, our oil, our wood to the U.S., but then the U.S. is coming in at that third level, which is really where the economic money is made. You're selling a finished table, all of that millwork, you have the details in, that's where all the money goes.
Well, those are all great points, and I really appreciate getting your perspective, Noel. And Laura, you were obviously nodding along with that as well. And what points did you really grasp from Noel?
Well, Noel raised a number of interesting points, and I think is a great example, too, of the conversation that we want to spark with this campaign. But one of the things he raised is buying power. And I think that we're not spending enough time thinking about the buying power part of the equation. So we're looking at the prices, but we're not looking at how do we make sure our wages go up. And Noel talked about working for a company where he's helping to innovate and drive some things away from paper. Yeah. And it is that innovation that increases productivity that allows companies to pay employees more. And sometimes that gets lost in the conversation. So I'm really glad that he brought it back to the conversation because that's really what we need to do. And for companies to want to go beyond the wood and the 2x4s, we need to make sure that we've got the climate here that is attractive enough for companies to invest in the machinery and equipment that then helps employees be more productive, that then helps increase wages. So that's the formula. That's kind of what we're trying to put on the table, is to dig a little deeper in this conversation. So I just really appreciated the call because he was doing exactly that.
Exactly. We've got time for a very quick call from Alex in Aldergrove. Alex, 30 seconds or so. What's your solution to keeping people in BC?
Yes, I think my solution is Mrs. Jones and Miss Bell on there is for military-wise, for veterans. And some of them could be damaged, who have medical issues on there and military discharges on honorable. And as long as it's honorable and everything else, they need housing. Like I myself, I will use for my example. And I have issues on there of medical and mental and everything else, and damaged spinal cord and this and that. And I can't find housing anywhere in British Columbia that I can afford.
No,
I am helping somebody out, staying in there, but I thought if Mr. Eby got a hold of this and Mr. Trudeau and Mrs. Freeland, maybe we could go after this.
Maybe we could get them along with that, Alex. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we are straight out of time, and we're actually out of time completely for the segment, Laura. So I thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Laura Jones is the president and CEO of the Business Council of BC, and we will be back in just a few minutes. You are listening and watching BC Today. The time is 12:27. And CBC News has learned that a police officer from Central Saanich charged with sexual assault on Tuesday has died. Several police sources say Matthew Ball died by suicide on Tuesday. The Vancouver police investigation says Ball and another officer, Ryan Johnston, had inappropriate sexual contact with a woman they met on duty. Yesterday, I spoke to former BC Solicitor General and Police Chief Cash Sheed, who is calling for a more cohesive body of oversight.
An ongoing problem we have of these different entities investigating certain allegations against police officers. For example, if we've got a public trust issue related to excessive use of force, it comes under the jurisdiction of the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner. If we've got someone that's suffered serious injury or even death as a result of police action, the Independent Investigation Office looks at it. They don't necessarily come together. And if we've got minor offenses against an officer, at times the internal investigation section or public standards section of that department look at those particular offenses against the officers. I would like to see that become unified, where we're talking about one agency in the province of British Columbia that's directed under the Police Act to investigate all of these allegations against police officers.
And if you or someone you know is struggling, you can call or text Canada's Suicide Crisis Helpline at 988. The Kids Help Phone is at 1-800-668-6868, or you can find a 24-hour crisis center at the Canadian Association for Suicide Prevention website. And this is BC Today. I'm Amy Bell, sitting in for Michelle Elliott. The CBC News to 12:30 with Robert Zimmerman is next.
Good afternoon. The city of Kelowna has purchased a former Hells Angels clubhouse. The property was one of 3 locations owned by the motorcycle gang that were seized by the province last year. Officials did not say how much the city paid for the property. but it had been valued at close to $1.5 million. As we've been hearing on the show, the president of the Vancouver Police Union is condemning the Vancouver Police Department's handling of a sexual assault case that ended in the suicide of a Central Saanich police officer. In a letter to members obtained by the Canadian Press, Ralph Kaiser says public statements made by the department undermine the officer's presumption of innocence. 43-year-old Sergeant Matthew Ball died by suicide shortly after being accused of one count of sexual assault and breach of trust. And BC health officials say at least 64 people have become sick after eating raw oysters from restaurants and retail locations. They say the norovirus-like gastrointestinal illness has been reported since November 1st in Vancouver Coastal, Fraser Health, and Island Health regions. And now the forecast. Snowfall warnings are in place for Williston, the Bulkley Valley, and inland sections of the North Coast. And wind warnings are in effect for coastal sections of the North Coast and North Vancouver Island. Elsewhere, highs around -17 and cloudy in the Peace. In the central interior, periods of snow with a high of -2. Highs to 0 with showers and wet flurries in sections of the Kootenays. In the southern interior, rain with a high of 3. And cloudy this afternoon in Greater Victoria. Periods of rain in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley with highs around 9. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Robert. And we'll continue with some emails that we've received on our topic of have you considered leaving BC and what do we need to do to keep people in our province? Nicole writes, I have spent $30,000 at a private college for a community support worker diploma, and I have tried to find full-time work that is safe and an equitable job in my hometown of Nanaimo and also in Duncan. I am currently working in an unrelated field at close to minimum wage, and my housing for my small bachelor is very high for what I get. At 44, I feel unsupported, unwelcome, and underemployed. What is left for me on Vancouver Island or elsewhere? Shouldn't I leave and go back to Alberta? Scott writes, living in BC is harder than ever, and it's not just about rising costs. 69% of labor is unpaid. Caregiving, volunteering, and other unpaid work are essential to our economy, yet they're becoming harder to sustain. It's time to rethink how we value work. A citizen dividend could paying everyone just for being a citizen could give families financial freedom to support unpaid labor that keeps our economy running. This could easily be funded through a land tax, implemented right away, allowing every family of 4 to receive $1,600 a month. It's a simple, fair step towards economic stability for everyone. Thank you for those emails. And we do have an update to our Make the Season Kind campaign. We're now sitting at $1,837,148.84. You can still donate until the end of the month at cbc.ca/kindbc. And it is supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year, but for many, it can be one of the most difficult. Many of us who don't have a partner or a family to celebrate with are looking for ways to connect with others. So we want to hear from you. Do you experience loneliness during the holidays? How do you find connection? And what are the challenges? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, and you can email us at bctoday@cbc.ca. We are lucky to be joined by two guests today. Reverend Ingrid Anderson is the rector at the Church of the Advent in Colwood, and they are holding a Home Alone lunch on Christmas Day. Hello, Reverend.
Talk to you today.
Thank you so much. And we're also joined by Kiefer Card, an assistant professor at SFU and the scientific director of the Canadian Alliance for Social Connection and Health. Hello, Kiefer. How are you?
Hi, good. Good to be with you.
Ingrid, I'll start with you. What made you think of hosting a lunch for people who live alone?
It actually started last year. We did our first one last year, and it was simply because I was alone at Christmas. My family is down in the Bay Area, and the rest of my family is in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I was on my own on Christmas Day. And I thought nobody should be alone on Christmas Day. It's the day where you feel that people should be together. It's more for me than Thanksgiving. It's defined by community and togetherness.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, we've got to do something about this. And my parish thought I was a bit mad. I said, let's open the doors to 50 people, no charge. Come in, sit down. We had the most wonderful time. There was a man in a three-piece suit who said, well, I have nothing better to do today. And we had all sorts of people. We ate lunch, we sang carols, and we built community. It was wonderful.
And for the people that came, what did they express to you? What were you surprised by how many people showed up, or surprised by the sentiments?
We were, and we learned very quickly that people didn't really RSVP early because people were holding on in the hopes that they would get an opportunity to be invited somewhere. So we had this wonderful rush of people at the last minute. People loved it. They said, please do this again. I cannot emphasize how much joy there was in that room. It was more than I had even hoped for. They loved it. I hope to see the same people and many more this year.
That is so wonderful that you were able to provide that and give people that joy that they were lacking on such an important day. Kiefer, what do we know? Well, we know that loneliness can be especially hard on people at this time of the year, but it is a problem year round. What impact does that have on people?
Yeah, so loneliness is just like hunger and thirst. It's a signal that our brain uses us to tell us that we need something. So you need social connection. It's fundamental to your health, your happiness, and how long you live. And this has been well demonstrated across decades of research, but only now are we really starting to take that seriously and consider, since the pandemic, how we can integrate into public health efforts to get people connected in a society where connection is often difficult, but especially at times of the year like this.
And we really have seen that issue come to the forefront during the pandemic, but it seems that we're still feeling those effects, that for many people they have not gotten that connection back. Why is that?
I think one of the reasons is it disrupted a lot of routines and relationships. One of the things we saw during the pandemic was the number of friends that people reported having shrunk considerably. And that's because people realized that maybe some of these relationships that they thought were stronger weren't as strong as they thought. And that maybe increased that sense of disconnection from one another. And then also, because we never had a public health campaign like we did around, food with food guidelines and exercise, like exercise guidelines, nobody really ever taught us the importance of social connection. And so I think one of the challenges that we've had coming out of the pandemic is making sure that we make social connection a priority every day of our lives.
And I'll throw this to both of you. Is there a difference between that connection that, we're experiencing right now? We're connecting via Zoom, which has become such a societal norm, as opposed to meeting in real life. I'll ask you first, Reverend. Do you find there's a big change and a shift in how people connect with each other?
I think so. I think Zoom is a tool, but it does not provide the same kind of level of connection at all. I've actually been very interested in connection since I was the general manager of an association for homeless people in Rosebank in Johannesburg in South Africa.
Okay.
And just talking to people who were unhoused, for me, it turned Maslow's hierarchy of needs upside down, because they could manage, they managed to get food from soup kitchens and that sort of thing. Shelter wasn't as important. What mattered more than anything else was belonging and being seen. And then Professor Card will know all about this, about the experiment at Simon Fraser with Rat Park, and how being isolated led to the sensitivity to substance abuse. We need community. And then recently, Canadian psychologist Susan Pinker in 2017 came out with some research that said the two factors that are the most important, even more than eating well and exercising, even more than having your flu vaccine, in terms of longevity after the age of 50, social connection, close relationships and social interaction are the most important factors for longevity. And for me, as a priest in an Anglican church, providing a space where people can belong, where they feel safe, they can be authentically themselves and be affirmed for whoever they are, that's the role of the church now. People need to belong somewhere. They need to build community. And the world has a pandemic of loneliness.
It certainly seems to be that way. And of course, I would love to invite our audience to call in and let us know if they are feeling this loneliness at this time of year, perhaps more keenly, but in their lives in general, and perhaps ways that they look to find connection at this time of year. You can call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also email us bctoday@cbc.ca. I know that through your research, you probably would have found many of the same things that Reverend Ingrid was touching on, that, you know, that this need for connection is incredibly important, and that we need to be doing more. And we do know that your Canadian Alliance for Social Connection and Health has actually released public health guidelines for social connection. Could you tell us a little bit more about them and just how important this is to a person's well-being?
Yeah, the Reverend is 100% correct. I think it's often we think of social connection as something nice to get. We prioritize our exercise and eating right and all these other factors that shape our health and well-being. But actually, human beings are built for social connection. You've probably heard the phrase that we're social animals. Mm-hmm. That's not just figurative, that's realistic. We regulate our emotions, our physical health, our emotional health, our social well-being is all regulated by our relationships with other people. Without relationships and connections to other people, without that ongoing daily and regular connection, we experience really high rates of heart disease, increased risk of cancer, poorer immune function. The health effects go on and on and on. They're greater than the effects of being obese. They're greater than the effects of living a sedentary lifestyle. They're greater than the effects of air pollution. And so this is really a fundamental thing. And so that's why we think public health guidelines for social connection are necessary, so that not only individuals can prioritize the importance of social connection, but so that our workplaces can make room for us to be social creatures, so that our communities can be built with social connection in mind, and so that policies at every level and in every department of government can be designed in ways that ensure people are getting the social connections that we fundamentally need as social animals.
And if it is such a fundamental need and it is so important to our mental and physical health, why have we dropped the ball or not put a focus on this for so long? Where have we sort of gone wrong as a society that we've left people in these isolated silos for so long?
Yeah, for 99% of human history, human beings lived in small tribes where they were constantly in states of connection. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really until the Industrial Revolution that people started to move to cities, and the social connections and networks that are fundamentally normal in human existence began to break down. For a long time, organizations, churches, clubs, and other venues of social connection were able to maintain that sense of social connection. But we've seen that many of those forms of connection have really declined in popularity with the emergence of online and internet connectivity. And while those forms of connection, as the Reverend said, are a good tool, they can't replace the fundamental benefits that we get from having close, supportive relationships and having people to turn to, not only when you're in crisis, but when you need to celebrate. And so that's why at a time of year like Christmas, social connections really come to the forefront of our minds, because everybody around us is connecting. And so if you don't have somebody to connect to, you really feel that. Mm-hmm. And I think that the challenge that people have is they feel that and they don't know how to respond to that emotion. Sometimes they watch TV or they scroll the internet, but those aren't the solutions. It's going out, it's throwing the dinner. It's being the one who throws the dinner and inviting people in. And so I think the Reverend's example is a really good one for this holiday season.
I couldn't agree more. We do have a caller coming in now from Ben in Vancouver. Hi, Ben. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me on.
Of course. And how are you feeling as we get into the holiday season now?
So thankfully, I've always been very lucky to have very supportive friends who will check on me. Personally, I try my best to reach out to those in Vancouver who may be without friends and family as well. I'm an immigrant myself from Hong Kong, and recently there's been a lot of immigrants who are from Hong Kong who come here without family.
Mm-hmm.
And cultural, at this end of the year, it's culturally important in Chinese culture as well. So the winter solstice dinner is a major festivity in my culture. So I would try to seek them out and host a winter solstice dinner, and also do a Christmas Eve dinner. And so this way, it's kind of just like making sure no one's left behind and no one's feeling lonely in these like culturally important occasions.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really up to each and every one of us to kind of step out and check on those friends who, might be without a strong support network here. And especially for a diverse city like Vancouver, I think this is a lot of people might not have as much roots here. And so if we can all take that little step, I think it will go a long way.
I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, Ben, and I thank you so much for calling in and sharing that with us. And we do have an email as well from Joan, and Joan writes, I'm alone without a family. Many friends have died. Others go away to be with their family. But I don't feel lonely much because I love nature, time with myself, and have a lot of projects. And I think most of the aloneness is because of the fake atmosphere that everyone is together and happy. And yet I know lots of folks that dread it because they have to go to a family they don't necessarily get along with. So I think a lot of the loneliness is due to the advertisements that it's a time you should be happy and with people. Thank you for writing that in. We also have an email from Mina. She writes, as a senior over 75, I have been very lonely since the pandemic. We used to have potlucks in our community. Now there are some seasonal dinners, but it is not the same. But they are not the same as friends. Social connection to me means intimate friendship, not just some gathering place or event. Thank you for those emails. And I'll return to our guest now. Reverend Ingrid, we tend to focus a lot on the holidays, but it is a year-round issue, a type of pandemic. Would you consider maybe hosting more events throughout the year just to get people more in the habit of stepping out of their comfort zone and coming to these events?
The wonderful thing about Church of the Advent, one of the things I love about Church of the Advent is we have events all the way through the year. We have social events that are open to the community. Every month, except for a small break in summer, we have a community lunch on the fourth Wednesday of every month, where for $10, and that money goes to charity, people come in and get a full meal, and it's packed. It's absolutely packed. We have strawberry teas and all sorts of events that are always absolutely jam-packed because people are hungry for connection.
They are hungry for connection, and as Kiefer said too, sometimes we are hungry for connection, but we're waiting for that invite. We're waiting for somebody to help us with our loneliness, where we might need to be the ones to reach out. Kiefer, what do you recommend people can do? It can be a bit daunting, I think, especially if somebody's been feeling alone or isolated long term. It can become more of a habit, perhaps, than they like to admit. How can people step out of this habit of being alone and form a connection themselves?
Yeah, I think one of the really fascinating things about loneliness and social isolation and our work to develop public health guidelines to tell people what they can do is how individual and personal these things are. Even the emails that you read kind of signaled that the various levels of social connection, everybody kind of has their own level of social connection that they find to be meaningful and satisfying. And I think that that's a real challenge for us, but also it's a real opportunity, because I think we can tell people that taking any step to improve your comfort, to expand your reach, really has the potential to benefit your life. So if you find yourself being socially anxious and you don't even feel comfortable around other people, maybe start by just going and sitting in a public place and getting used to being around people. And over time, eventually you'll be comfortable getting around people. So you might not be ready to throw the party or go to the party even at this moment today. But someday down the road, if you take those little steps and challenge yourself and think about, what can I do today to put me in regular contact with other people, then you will one day be able to achieve those social goals. And I think that's the key message here, is that we need to really prioritize it and think for ourselves, what's a way can I need? Because actually in our data, loneliness is not necessarily the contributor to poor health. It's actually social isolation. So if you're isolated, regardless of whether or not you feel lonely, there is a health impact. It's something our bodies and minds and souls need. And so I think it's really critical for all of us, even if we don't feel like we need to go out and get social connection today, that we find little ways to do that. Talking to a cashier or a barista, talking to someone at the bus stop, these little steps over time have really powerful impacts in shaping who we are as social creatures.
I love that. It's almost like looking at it the same way we look at exercise, physical exercise. We maybe don't want to do it, but we know it's good for us, so we motivate ourselves. And once we start doing it, we feel so much better. So that's going to be my mindset for the new year, and I hope people adopt it. Reverend, before I let you both go, can people still get involved in your Christmas Day lunch?
Absolutely. The doors are wide open. Please RSVP. If you can, it helps, but if you can't, just come. We've set 50 places. There's still plenty of room. And if more of you come, we'll just make the table longer. Come and have a good time on Christmas Day. This is for single adults. And if you want to RSVP, can I give you a number?
Yep.
250-474-3031. So this is Colwood in Victoria. 250-474-3031. And if nobody answers, leave a message. We'd love to see you. We had such a good time last year, and I know it's going to be even better this year.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And I thank you both for joining me. I feel like this is such an important issue, especially at this time of year, but year round. So I appreciate you both and wish you both the best of the holiday season.
Thank you. You too.
Reverend Ingrid Anderson is the rector at the Church of Advent in Colwood, and Kipper G. Card, an assistant professor at SFU, and the scientific director, Canadian Alliance for Social Connection and Health. And Christmas is in a week. Can you believe it? We might as well get into the holiday spirit. So here's a holiday song, and it's a bit of a cheeky one. Here's Dan Mangan with A Very Vancouver Christmas.
It's Christmas in Vancouver, no snowflakes falling down. Won't all the cars be happy? The bike lanes go year round. It's Christmas in Vancouver, no need for tire chains. The heat from our hot yoga is fueling climate change. It's Christmas, Christmas, it's Christmas, Christmas, it's a very, very Vancouver Christmas. It's Christmas, Christmas, it's Christmas, Christmas, it's a Vancouver Christmas. The mountains and the beaches, how they make children sing. And all they want this Christmas is affordable housing. The parents working overtime for presents round the tree. Something loud with parts that bang, ain't nothing come for free. Usually there's hockey to keep our spirits keen. Where are Christmas in Vancouver is admittedly West Coast. But wait for February when you call your Aunt Lois. Maybe she lives Calgary, the Peg, or Montreal. She'll talk of shovel driveways. You'll be cycling the seawall. It's Christmas. Christmas. It's Christmas. It's a Vancouver Christmas. 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 It is a Vancouver Christmas. It is Christmas. Christmas. It's a Vancouver Christmas. It is Christmas. 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 It's a Vancouver Christmas. It's a Vancouver Christmas.
And hitting the high notes there, Dan. Very impressive. You can always email us if you want to let us know what your favorite Christmas carol is. Always interesting and always up for hot debate, of course. So that's where you can reach us, bctoday@cbc.ca. And that is our show for today. Thank you for calling in and joining the discussion. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca.